Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. Today we have some malicious compliance stories and our first story of the day is by TBO55. Long calls equals better bonus? Hold my beer. A brief story from my time in a telecoms contact center. I worked for a rather large Australian provider that everyone knows and actively hates, mostly because it's fun to hate them. In this story, we were doing outbound calls to transition people onto the new NBN network. For those of you unfamiliar with Australia's internet, it was third world, literally. We were slower than Nigeria until we rolled out the NBN and upgraded to slightly faster third world speeds. Also worth mentioning, much like the company I worked for, the NBN was universally hated, cause it was crap. Enough said. Anyway, like all call centers, we had a bunch of miserable hoops to jump through in order to bring our paycheck up to a level that could be considered humane. Our capitalist overlords refer to these hoops as KPIs, Key Performance Indicators for the blissfully ignorant. Anyway, with the new campaign came a new set of KPIs. Conversion rate, active call time, after call time, and customer satisfaction were the KPIs of the day. Now, these KPIs were normally all freaking BS. You needed to meet some freaking god-tier numbers in order to collect a half-decent paycheck. However, in this particular case, there was a loophole. See, due to the controversial nature of the NBN, we were told to focus on quality over quantity. They wanted an excellent customer experience, and the new KPIs were a reflection of that. As such, quantity of conversions was not a KPI, and when I questioned if we had time limits on calls, I was told, "We don't care what you do, but long calls means a good experience, so keep them on the line and get them switched over." And so began the best work month I had at that soul trap. See, before entering comms, I was a salesman in aged care, and a pretty good one at that. And you know that stereotype of old people talking for eternity and beyond? It's a stereotype for a reason. Each morning I would log in, volunteer for the aged clientele campaign, which was easy because they were normally the hardest people to convert, fearful of scams, technology and such, so not many people wanted to do it. And then I would start to chat. See, when speaking with the elderly, all it takes is a well-placed poke or two, and you can literally have them speak for hours. So for the next month, I took 2 to 4 calls a day, down from 20 to 30, had almost zero after call time, the calls were so long I didn't need it, had an 80% conversion rate, and 90% customer satisfaction. Turns out people tend to like you after you take the time to listen to them. Each phone call, assuming I wasn't told to freak off upon introducing myself, would last 2 to 3 hours minimum, with my record being a 7-hour call to a lovely bloke named Stan. He told some great war stories. I ended up doubling my normal paycheck, and my managers, while not being entirely happy with my nonsense, put up with it because at the end of the day, those were the rules and KPIs we were given. I got my paycheck, the oldies got a good chat, and my employer got to pay through the nose. Happy endings for all. I proceeded to hand in my resignation once KPIs went back to normal, which I, to this day, regard as one of the best decisions I ever made. So considering what you may know previously and what you heard in this story, do you personally think that performance-based incentives are a scam in the workplace? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Our next story is by Alula. We'll follow the quote and contract as requested. I explained what a malicious compliance was to my dad. English is not our first language, so he wasn't familiar with the term, and he told me a story of his own. For a little bit of backstory, my dad works for Mike, the owner of a construction company. Part of my dad's job is to study the plans and quote and place a bid on the company's behalf. Important to note that the quote is usually made by someone with knowledge about construction and the different steps required for the job. One day, my dad receives a quote which looks a bit botched. The document is a patchwork of different sections taken from past quotes of similar jobs. The whole thing has been made by Janine McJanine Incorporated. Far from knowing anything related to construction, Janine is actually the executive director of the town's council. Not making any sense of the plans, Mike suggests to refrain from bidding on the job or to ask the mayor to issue new plans made by a professional. My dad tells them that instead, they should take the job as it is and work the details later. Mike's company places a bid on the job and, unsurprisingly, gets it. It only takes a few days to hit a rock wall. See, the top 30% of the ground they had to dig was easily removed. As for the remaining 70%, it was solid rock and needed special equipment to deal with it. The contract usually has multiple instructions in regards of unexpected situation. The workers can just refer to the contract and follow the authorized solutions. However, no such informations were in the botched contract. Cue malicious compliance. Not wanting to rent the specialized equipment at their own expense, Mike's company contacted the mayor's office. Mayor has to discuss the issue with the council, only to come to the inevitable conclusion that they have to pay for the equipment. All the while, the workers on the construction site still get paid while waiting for the decision. What had estimated as a $30,000 job ended up costing the town $90,000. And to my dad's knowledge, Janine never did a quote for the town ever again. Yeah, I feel like if you're going to file and submit a job for some kind of construction company that's going to cost multiple tens of thousands of dollars, you might want to make sure that the entire contract of the job is written by a proper professional. Good work, Janine. This next story is by T-Bone XXIV. Shut up and turn on the gas? Okay. This is a really old event, and for the record, I am a decent enough human being to feel really bad about how this came out. After I was done feeling vindicated and amused. I felt extra bad because of those feelings, so I guess it somewhat balances. Back in the late 80s through the mid-90s, my dad grew watermelons every year. It's a good cash crop, but intensive on the physical labor side of things, and you're working hardest when the weather is hottest. You have to work really hard to pick the melons when they are ready to pick, as healthy vines will bump out growth on the remaining melons fast in late June, so you can pick again in just a few days. So only a certain type of person is willing and able to really capitalize on the crop. My dad was just that certain type of person. He was transitioning all of his farming activity from row crops like corn and peanuts and cotton to pecans. He needed that summer cash crop of watermelons to stay afloat until the pecans were paying off. I worked for him at the time, and part of the successful transition from row crops to pecans hinged upon using buried drip irrigation for the pecans. For 6 years, I buried drip irrigation for several months every year. We were able to water groves with $2,000 wells instead of the $200,000 wells needed with sprinklers. Big difference. Anyway, we irrigated the melons with drip irrigation too. Only it wasn't durable stuff used on melons. It was thin, cheap stuff made to last a season and no more. The plastic film covering the beds was 1 mil thick and would photodegrade from sunlight in a year. The drip tape itself did need to be picked up and disposed. So this one year, my dad gets a bright idea to burn the film at the end of the season instead of letting it break down slowly. A local agriculture company has a towable burn rig we can rent. Now this thing is just the sort of rig no one in their right mind would insure. I'll describe it because it was a real monster. Okay, start with a 1,000-gallon propane tank. The huge kind you see in some yards that only have to be filled every couple of years. Now you put that mamba jamba on top of a homemade trailer made to be pulled behind a farm tractor. And you hook up a pump to the PTO on the tractor so that it can pump the propane, not just let it flow from expansive properties. Cause you need a lot of propane to flow for this kind of beast. Then the back of the homemade trailer has a support shaft mounted across it, and there are 2 long boom shafts on the hinges that fold forward for transport but can be locked perpendicular like wings when deployed. They are 16 feet long each. The trailer is 8 feet across. So when the wings are deployed, this bad boy spans 40 feet. Every 4 feet, on all 3 shafts, there is a torch. These torches are angled down and backwards. The idea is that a flaming jet of propane would hit every scrap of plastic film and burn it away. We won't even get into the environmental aspects. So this was August, all the melons were done, and cleanup needed to happen. My dad rented this beast, had me hook it up to a tractor, and meet him in one of the fields. There were 2 controls up in the cab with the operator, both toggle switches. One of them was to turn on the gas for the pilot lights on the torches. The other was to go full on burn everything in sight. But it was a windy day, maybe 10 to 15 miles per hour average. I was not comfortable. I voiced my objections to burning on a windy day and got shut down hard. Told to just do as I was told. Okay then. So I'm sitting up there in the cab following instructions. I get told to turn on the gas for the pilot light, so I do. And then I sit there for a good 5 to 10 minutes twiddling my thumbs because it's too darned windy to be burning stuff. It's too windy to get the torches to light. The breeze is so stiff it is dissipating the gas and blowing out the old man's lighter repeatedly. And I'm just sitting there doing as instructed. After another 50 or 60 failed attempts, my dad/old man/boss was reaching the end of his patience and yelled up at me to not just sit there. Turn on the full gas. Now, I was annoyed and didn't want to be out there, but this just seemed to be a bad idea, so I spoke up. But that will, he says, shut up, do what I said. But, shut up, either flip that switch or get down here and light it while I flip it. We need more gas to get it to light. I flip the switch, torch ignites, shoots a jet of flame directly onto the old man's sandaled feet. Yes, that's right, he was wearing sandals, and he lit a wide open jet of propane that was aimed directly at those sandaled feet. I let out a loud bray of laughter just as I flipped the switch to off. The old man's head swiveled away from his feet to me in a trice, but despite my guffaw, I had a sober, morose expression plastered on. He couldn't wear shoes for a couple of weeks. While he didn't need dressings on his feet, they were pretty well done. We didn't burn any watermelon film that year. Just the idea of burning anything regardless sketches me out, let alone this monster machine full of torches and a massive amount of propane. I'd be good. I'd let the old man deal with that, hire somebody else. I don't know, I wouldn't be involved, especially on a windy day. Our next story is by Yoop R2086. Want to pay half the price? Sure, but expect half the service. This is a story my grandma told me, so it may not be the most accurate. Also, I'm Dutch, so an apology if I spell stuff wrong. My grandma was, at the time of this story, about 10 years old. A lot of people didn't have cars back then, so she was surprised when she saw that her neighbor had bought one. One day, she was playing with her friend and saw the neighbor step out of his car and walk towards his house. The car looked like it was heavily used and had a lot of mud and filth on it. Then, my grandma and her friend went over to the neighbor's house and asked if they could wash his car for a little money. The neighbor said yes, but he told them he would only let them wash his car for half the price. Then he closed the door. Here comes the malicious compliance. My grandma had an idea. She thought, if he's gonna pay half, we're gonna clean half. And so they did. They cleaned the front half of the car spotless. And from the back seat on, it stayed exactly the same. They went to the neighbor's house and knocked on his door. He opened the door, looked at his car, looked at the children, looked at his car again, and had a look on his face that my grandma can only describe as unamused. At last, he gave them the other half of the money and got the rest of his car cleaned. I mean, fair's fair. They got quoted a price and they said, well, I'll only pay half that. So they went ahead and did half work. Just because you didn't like half your car looking terrible doesn't mean you had to pay them the other half. And our final story of the day is by Latommy's fan. So you don't want me to throw out spoiled milk? Okay. I was in the US Navy on a destroyer back when it was wooden ships and iron men. I got assigned to the mess decks to do setup and cleanup. Well, the cook was terrible in every way, including ordering supplies. On one of the cruises, he ordered twice too much reconstituted milk, which came in 5-gallon cartons. Now, the milk wasn't very good to start with, so the crew wasn't drinking much, and the milk started to spoil. We would put it in the dispenser, sample it, and if it was spoiled, throw it out. The problem was there was a lot of milk, and it got to the point if you just got a whiff of spoiled milk, it would turn your stomach. We went to the cook, told him all the milk needed to be thrown out, but he refused. Here's where the malicious compliance comes in. None of us wanted to smell any more spoiled milk, so what we did was put the milk carton in the dispenser and placed a trash can nearby. Then we would stand back to spy. If anyone took a glass and immediately threw it in the trash, we would throw that carton out and load up another one. It took a month to get rid of all the bad milk. I get the unwillingness to want to throw out that much stock, especially when they made that order and it's so much supply, but if it's so obviously spoiled and not any good at all, just get rid of it. Just admit your mistake and save every man on this destroyer from having to constantly smell and witness and throw out this spoiled milk. Definitely not a great cook. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So if you have a favorite story of the day, let me know which story and why in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, and if you haven't, subscribe and turn notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video. No matter what you do, whether it's just viewing the video, liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, I appreciate the heck out of it. Every little thing that you do helps the channel grow that much more, and I can't thank you enough for it. So until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll be right here next time on the Storytime channel.